Hey y'all, welcome back to Soft Girl, Soft Life, the podcast where we dive deep into the transformative power of doing your thing in the world from a nurtured place where you feel empowered to show up as your full self. I'm your host, Kleidi Jeen. Hi! And you can go ahead and grab a seat, get a snack, and get this tea. Now, tell me this. Are you exhausted from the weight of constantly being on edge in survival mode? Are you easily agitated and always teetering on the edge of being in the bad mood? Does any of this sound familiar? I thought it did. Well, in today's episode, we're going to get things popping and shed some light on survival mode from my own perspective and experience with it. It was not pretty, I tell you what. You know what? I was able to face my chronic survival mode with love and kindness and gently make my way through it. And so today I'm sharing 3 ways to do just that. All right then, if you are ready to infuse your life with a little more softness, trust, you won't want to miss this. Now, what is survival mode? Survival mode is a natural response to crisis, to chaos, and traumatic experiences, like all the drama, right? It's our fight, flight, fawn, or freeze mode, but on repeat, like steadily, constantly. See, we normally go into crisis response and then come out of it, but what's happening here in survival mode is that we're constantly presented with crisis, chaos, trauma in our society. We're scrolling through our phones, in our communities, in all these contexts, and we're also experiencing it in our daily lives. So survival mode is chronic stress. It's chronic stress, and that's not great. But the kicker is that instead of caring for ourselves and nurturing ourselves through these experiences, we go hard, we double down, and we try to move forward without flinching, all the while somehow convincing ourselves that this is totally gonna work, right? Yes, okay, I can just keep going. So what do we say in this moment? We say, I will survive. I will keep going. If I can get to this point, then everything's gonna be all right. We trick ourselves into continuing to go on because we just know that if we let ourselves see the reality of the constant survival mode and its effects on us, we'll just fall apart. We'll fall apart. But we need to. In fact, what usually happens to snap someone out of living in constant chronic stress mode, near-death situations, right? Nervous breakdowns, other really serious health scares and conditions. It takes some real to jar us out of our serious denial of the extreme harshness of survival mode. So here's my offering today. Instead of living with stress, aka survival mode, and just bearing the brunt of it all until we have a big breakdown, why don't we try something different? Are you in? Before we get into those new things we're going to let's get clear on what that brunt, that weight actually is that survival mode puts on us. So when we're in survival mode, we're experiencing the effects of chronic stress, right? And that shows up in our lives in a number of ways. But here's a few from my own personal experience, like no Google. These are some of the ways survival mode have shown up in my own life. Frequent anxiety attacks, easy agitation and easily being put in a bad mood, not sharing on how bad I felt with others, isolating myself from family and friends, I had a strong need to be in control of like everything, constant forgetfulness, poor sleep, feeling helpless, and the list goes on. These are just a few of the things I felt. And I think it's really important to share my real lived experience with chronic stress as a Black woman, because our signs don't necessarily look like everyone else's. And in fact, if you're a Black woman or femme, I want you to please share in the comments your experience with survival mode and how it feels and how it shows up in your life and how it's impacted your life. So the more we share, the more we know, and those who are experiencing these types of symptoms can get help. I bet you're guessing that now I'm going to share with you how I was able to get in control of my chronic stress in a gentle way. And you're absolutely right. Okay, got me. As I talked about in an earlier episode, my softness method, which I use in my client work and when creating my digital products as well, this was my response to the deepest, darkest survival mode situation I had ever been in, and it worked. So I am going to share that with you today, or what I consider the wildly specific top 3 practices from the softness method that helped me to move out of survival mode and into balance and, dare I say, even thriving. One practice that felt like magic for me was restorative yoga. Yeah. I've taught it for many years, and I used to teach a packed restorative class on every Friday night. It was wonderful. And for me, the pose Viparita Karani was and is like pure magic. If I ever felt super anxious, this was my pose. It's commonly known as legs up the wall, but this was the pose that helped me to process stress in the moment in my life. And if you've ever taken a yoga class on repeat at some point, I'm sure your yoga teacher, like me, did lots of hip stretches. And during the height of my survival mode experiences, also pigeon pose, an intense hip stretch pose, would help me move through those experiences and help them move through my body, and even brought me to tears sometimes. So I strongly recommend trying out restorative yoga, and particularly legs up the wall and any hip stretch, but especially pigeon pose. Like, I didn't understand why people got so emotional in pigeon pose, honestly, even as a yoga teacher. But after I experienced some like, okay, now I get it. Yeah. The second thing I want to bring up that really helped me through moments of chronic stress is intentionally doing nothing. As a person trained in mindfulness and yoga and more, I absolutely know the power of getting out of doing and going into being. And so when I was stressed out and in survival mode, I was doing, and I couldn't stop. Like, even if I saw it, I couldn't stop myself. And I always had a reason to finish this one thing or get a head start on another thing. Not gonna lie, this is like one of the hardest things to do when you're there in the midst of survival mode without easily being able to turn off that switch. It seems scary. It feels like you're gonna lose the little control that you have left. But when you actually take that mindful look at these feelings and thoughts, they're just that. They're guesses about how things will turn out, but you have to try. Honestly, this is the thing. Doing nothing, this is the thing that allows your parasympathetic system to trigger in and finally bring you into that calm and into that balance. So how in the world does one do nothing, right? You start little by little. You start 15 minutes one day, 5 minutes the next day, 10 minutes the following day, maybe back up to 15 minutes the fourth day. You increase it little by little, and you don't pay too much attention to it. You don't keep track so much as you stay curious. Like, oh, I gotta see what it feels like to do nothing again. Like, let me try this out right now. You just get curious, It's gotta be light. It's gotta be playful, experimental. And some things you can do to do nothing, right, for your do nothing time, are you can stare out of the window, right? Looking at the trees blowing in the wind. You can lay on your back and stare at the ceiling, daydream. You can take a few deep breaths and focus in on your next several natural breaths. Stare at something until it goes fuzzy, until you just can't even see it, or until it turns into a face or something, Like, of course you can meditate, and I have many products and freebies on the subject, but if meditation isn't something that you're used to, or if you're really, really busy, I invite you to start with these really, really simple practices so you can meet yourself where you are and not try and fail and shove yourself into another box. Like, let's stop trying to do that. Let's meet ourselves where we are and go from there, okay? So the third thing I did was to accept and allow my emotions. This really helped me get out of survival mode. Like, I think it was just a key practice, this allowing myself to feel my emotions. Now, I have lots of tools at the ready for this, from my certifications, from teaching, from working one-on-one with clients, but just to be transparent about what actually worked, right? And what worked the most powerfully. I just have to tell you that allowing yourself to feel your emotions and give yourself space and time for them to work through you. This is, in my opinion and experience, the number one way to process those times of stress, those times of crisis and chaos and so forth, and move through them without the stress getting stuck in your body and your physiological self, showing up as illness, as disease, and chronic survival mode, right? When I allow myself to cry, to make all the weird and awful sounds that express how I feel, to shake, to rock, and all of the big movements and whatever else that emotion was expressed, and it no longer has a hold on me. It isn't in the driver's seat, and I am. And also, physiologically, I've processed the stimuli, the phenomenon that brought on the strong emotions, and I can now see clearly. I'm now in calm and balance, and the emotion might come back around. It probably will. Emotions come and go like that in waves, right? But when it comes back around, I can meet it face to face again and explore it. And again, allow it in and allow myself to process it just as easily. And then I'm more aware of my reality and of my present moment, and I'm more anchored there in the present. And I'm more available, like, for myself, for my children, because I'm not blindly debilitated by trying to ignore and shove down the emotions that I feel, even though they don't feel good, because that causes those emotions to take over. So these are the 3 practices I did, among others, like, journaling, exercising, connecting with others, seeking support, things like that. But these were the 3 things that were key to gently pulling me out of that survival mode in a more balanced way, into a more balanced way of living. And one last thing I'll say, because this part kind of affected my ability to be visible, which is important if you have your own business, okay? And that thing is that you do change when you go through a period of chronic stress and you make it out to the other side. That takes a lot of internal growth, and you gain a lot of wisdom. So I am a much different person right now than who I was before. And I love this new version of me, and I am in awe of her. But it did take some getting used to have grown and to have witnessed my own growth in that mindful way. It's a trip. It's a trip. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. So there you have it. 3 proven ways you can gently move out of survival mode without having to drastically change your life. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share your takeaways in the comments. And if you're interested in learning more about my Softness Method and how to take actionable steps, simple steps, towards a softer life, why don't you try out my self-led course, the Soft Life Starter Kit, the only step-by-step program, the only one that teaches you how to enter your soft life era in as little as 5 days. Okay, so you can find it linked in the description below. Let's keep this conversation going in the comments. And until next time, I want you to create a life so soft it feels like sleeping in on a Monday morning, wrapped in a cashmere blanket. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. And remember, over here, we are all soft, no fluff. Stay soft, stay joyful, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Soft Girl, Soft Life.